It's hard to see a sunflower blooming and not smile. Sunflowers are one of my favorite flowers to grow in my garden. They're simple to grow and add beauty even during the hottest months of the year. And in today's video, I'm going to share my best tips for growing sunflowers and give you all the reasons why I think you should add them to your garden. But if we haven't met before, my name's Angela from Growing in the Garden, and I love to share garden inspiration and helpful tips so you can be successful growing your own garden. One of the best things about sunflowers is they are easy to grow. Drive along roads in rural parts of the country and you will see sunflowers sprouting up along the road. Sunflowers tolerate tough, dry conditions and are super simple to add to your garden. Sunflowers are one of the simplest flowers to grow, and they grow great started directly in the garden, especially if you live in a warm climate. Here in the low desert, plant sunflower seeds from February all the way through July. Sunflower seeds are easy to handle. Plant them directly in the garden about an inch deep. How far apart to plant depends on the variety. Small blooms can be spaced about 6 inches apart, but the largest blooms need about 3 feet between plants. If you do start seeds indoors, transplant them early, as the roots don't always transplant well. If you're growing sunflowers for the edible seeds, choose a confection variety. These are types like Gigantus, Mammoth Gray Stripe, Mammoth Russian, and Titan. You can tell from the names they are going to be big. Sunflowers aren't too picky about their soil and will grow in rocky and sandy soil, but sunflowers grown in rich soil will grow taller and larger. Sunflowers need regular water as they're growing, and it's best to put that water right on the soil and not on the leaves as they're growing. Use some sort of drip system to water those sunflowers. Each time you want to water the entire root zone of that sunflower plant and then let it dry out a little bit before you water it again. Growing sunflowers is simple, but it isn't always easy to tell when the seeds are ready to harvest for eating. If you see the birds beginning to snack on your seeds, that's a clue that they're beginning to be ready. If you're going to be harvesting that sunflower and you want to keep it away from the birds, you may need to cover that flower in a paper sack or in netting to allow it to finish growing so the birds don't get it. Harvesting too soon means the kernels inside the seeds won't be fully developed. You want to leave those seeds in the sunflower until the kernels inside get nice and plump. Here are a few things to look for when you're trying to determine when to harvest. Those seeds all along the sunflower will be plump and developed. The flower petals along the outside of the sunflower will shrivel up and dry and fall off. If you're cutting the stem off and leaving the seeds inside the stem to develop, you want to cut that stem off when the back of the flower is yellow. Cut off the stalk about 4 inches below the plant and then hang that upside down and allow the seeds to continue to ripen in the flower. If you're harvesting the seeds right away, you want to let the back of that flower turn brown before harvesting. This method usually requires you to cover the head with some kind of netting to keep it away from the birds. Loosen the seeds by hand to remove them from the head. Let seeds dry out before storing. Once you collect the seeds, you can eat them right away. You can roast them with a little salt. To roast the seeds for eating, you need to get about 2 quarts of water and between 1/4 and 1/2 cup of salt. And then dump the sunflower seeds in. Give them a good stir. And you're going to let the sunflower seeds soak for 3 to 4 hours or overnight. Drain the sunflowers and then pat the seeds dry. Bake in a 300-degree oven for about 30 to 40 minutes until the seeds are golden brown. You can also save some to plant next season. The great thing about growing sunflowers is there's usually enough that you can do all 3 things. To store the seeds for eating, let the seeds dry completely and store in a sealed container for 2 to 3 months or up to a year if you keep them in the freezer. In my garden, I'm growing lots of different varieties of sunflowers. There's the tall mammoth varieties that are often grown for their edible seeds, and there's the branching varieties that bloom for a long time and have smaller blooms. The birds love both flowers, and I love having both types in my garden. Here are a few of my favorite reasons to have sunflowers growing in my garden. Number one, I love the joy and beauty that sunflowers add to the garden. Such a simple plant, but such a bright pop of color, whether you're growing the mammoth varieties or the branching varieties, both add beautiful color to the garden. Arizona summers can be brutal, and sunflowers take the heat like a champ. Another of my favorite reasons to grow sunflowers is they can be used as a trellis for other plants. I realized this years ago when I had a cucumber plant climbing up a nearby sunflower. Since that time, I've used this to my advantage and planted sunflowers nearby one of the many vining crops that you have growing in your garden over the summer. Sunflowers also provide excellent shade during these hot Arizona summers, especially those tall branching varieties. Allow them to grow nice and tall. You can remove lower leaves to allow plants to grow. Those upper leaves are going to shade those plants below them. Sunflowers also attract plenty of wildlife to your yard. The pollinators love the blossoms and the birds love the seeds. Here in the low desert, lovebirds often find our sunflowers first thing in the morning, and I love it. I love watching the lovebirds enjoy the seeds. They make a bit of a mess in the garden, but I don't mind a bit. Sunflowers also make excellent cut flowers. Branching varieties especially offer plenty of blooms all season. Harvest the stem for cut flowers just as the petals begin to open. The flower will continue to open once harvested. At the end of the season, when you're ready to remove that sunflower stalk, don't pull it up. It will remove lots of roots and dirt. Instead, cut it 2 or 3 inches above the ground, and then in a couple of months, those roots will go back into the soil and that little stump will just fall off. It's easy to see why sunflowers are a favorite part of my garden. I will always have sunflowers growing in my summer garden. Hopefully you will too. Thank you so much for watching.